Isn't there a quiz today in class?
If you asked if there was a quiz, I think he said it was next week.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. My headphones weren't plugged in.
Did you ask if there was a quiz or if he was taking attendance?
If there was a quiz.
I'm pretty sure he said it was next week. That's what I wrote down.
Okay, sweet. I wasn't too sure. Thank you.
May the force be with you.
And
Also
also
with you.
Also with you.
Hello, class. Good to see everyone. Raise your hand if you know what Ash Wednesday is. Anyone know what Ash Wednesday is?
vaguely.
I see a couple of hands up. Ash Wednesday is the beginning of Lent in the church, in the Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, blah blah blah. And Ash Wednesday was last Wednesday, but there was a snowpocalypse, and so nothing happened last Wednesday. And so my church, we did Ash Wednesday today, and that's why I've got my ashes on. And it's good to see everyone. And does anyone remember what the first thing that we're going to do today is?
Talk about the paper, right?
That's right. We're going to talk about the paper. Thanks, Ariana, and whoever else chimed in just then. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you and pull up the paper or the syllabus. Can you all see my screen at the moment? My desktop?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. And a lot of this is just going to be reading from the syllabus and me being like, I really mean that. Like what I wrote, I really mean that. Okay, so here we go. And you guys have this on Canvas. I don't know why I didn't pull it up from Canvas, but oh well. So yeah, here is the syllabus, and there's syllabi are insanely boring, but I'm going to read this, okay? All right, mid-semester paper. Here we go. Mid-semester paper. For this paper, students will select a pericope. Let me hear you say pericope.
Pericope.
That's the weirdest word ever, right? It's not periscope, although sometimes autocorrect changes it to periscope. It means passage. For this paper, students will select a passage, a pericope, a section of text included in the required reading of the course. Okay, now pause. What's the required reading of the course? It's right here, right? It's this right here, okay? You can select a pericope from Barnes. That's what we're discussing right now. From Descartes, which we haven't started yet. From Plato, which we've already finished. From Nietzsche, which we haven't started yet. Or even from the Heraclitus or Parmenides handouts. Are you with me so far? Those are the required readings. What I'm asking you to do is select a passage from those texts. Now, the passage can be, well, let me just keep reading. For this paper, students will select a pericope or section of text included in the required readings for the course and discuss it philosophically. What is it?
The passage.
That's right, the passage. That's exactly right. So notice, I'm wanting you to discuss a passage. I'm wanting you to get your nose buried in a book, in a text, and that's the thing I want you to talk about. I don't want you to talk about your feelings. I don't really even want you to talk primarily about your opinions. I want you to talk about the text, and I'm going to tell you how I want you to talk about the text, okay? So let's keep reading. The pericope can be any number of pages. There's no lower limit or upper limit to the number of pages included. It could be a half page. It could be a third of a page. It could be a section or a chapter within the Aristotle book. It could be the entirety of the Nietzsche essay, which is relatively short. By the way, the Nietzsche essay has been on Canvas since the beginning of the semester. And it's pretty short. I think it's like 7 or 8 pages, maybe something like that. Yeah. Now, are you with me so far? So don't just wax eloquent. No, select a pericope, a text, a section of text from the required readings, okay? And then discuss it philosophically. Now, read with me. By discuss it philosophically, I mean that at least the following must be achieved in the paper. Number one, autocorrect changed it to Periscope. Number one, identify the passage. What does that mean? It means you got to tell me what passage you have selected, okay? It's not good enough just to select the passage. You got to tell me what passage you've selected. And y'all, I want to encourage you, see, like, you guys are all really smart and wonderful, gifted people, but you are, this is your first philosophy class. And a lot of you are like nursing major, which is great. Nursing people are amazing, but you don't have a ton of experience writing papers, especially in the humanities. And so what I want to encourage you to do is to wear the syllabus like a straitjacket. What do I mean? What I mean is, force yourself to like do these things. Be very wooden. Follow the instructions woodenly. Are you with me? Like, don't try to get all fancy. Just do the steps. Work the steps. That's it. Ask yourself, have I done number 1? Check. Have I done number 2? Check. Make a checklist. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I would encourage you to do. The more you do that, the better your grade will be. The less you do that, the less your grade will be. So for example, if you don't tell me what text you've identified, bad news. It's going to make me kind of pissed. And, I just don't do it. So are you with me? Follow the steps. Very, very, almost like you're a robot. Step 1, step 1, check. Step 2, check. Step 3, check. Almost like that, okay? So, yeah. By discuss it philosophically, I mean that at least the following must be achieved in the paper. 1, identify the pericope. 2, interpret the pericope or give me a summary of it, okay? Now, in the same spirit as what I just said about being kind of like a robot, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't go too fast. Don't jump to the third thing until you've done the second thing. Are you with me? Do them in the right sequence, in the right order. And so the second thing that I want you to do, and that this is important. Like you could take up a whole page doing this easily. Interpret the passage. Give me an interpretation or a summary of it. Literally, I want you to say something like, in this passage, Plato is trying to say that, boom, and then put it in your own words. This isn't a place to quote him. This is a place to put it in your own words. Are you with me? So give me your own interpretation. I want to know what you think it's saying, what you think it means. Okay. Now, check it out. I'm asking you for an interpretation, right? Does that include your opinion? Like, does that include how you feel about it? No. Does it include if you think he's full of shit? No. Like, tell me what he's trying to say. What does the author mean? Okay? That's what I mean by interpretation. Put it like this. At this point in the paper, you're being descriptive, not proscriptive. You're just describing what you think the author is trying to say, what the author means, okay? That's step number 2. So step number 1, what's step number 1?
Identify what the passage we're talking about.
Yeah, identify the passage. Like literally, I chose to write my paper on chapter 10 in the Barnes book. And I'm going to focus especially on like pages 66 and 67. That would be awesome. Or remember how in the Plato book, you've got those marginal numbers, not just the page numbers, but the marginal numbers. You could be like, I've decided to focus on, you know, the following section in Plato's Euthyphro, 10e through 11b, right? That's identifying the passage. Now, who can tell me what step 2 is?
Summarize.
Summary, right. Now, who said that? Was that Sarah Russell?
Yes, sir.
Good job, Sarah. Now, does that summary include a bunch of like feelings that you have about the text?
Nope.
No, that's exactly right. Boom. Okay. 3.
I have just one little question.
Yeah, go.
Can we choose, for example, one of the dialogues that we didn't discuss, but they were still part of?
That's a good question. Look, here's the way I'm going to handle this. The answer is no. That's a great question because that is kind of ambiguous. The answer is no. However, you may email me and ask me special permission.
Right.
Okay. So I don't want to waste time here talking about that. The answer is basically no, unless you get my permission. And the way you get my permission is emailing me and tell me, say a little bit, just like maybe spend 3 or 4 minutes telling me what passage in the text and why you're interested in it. Okay.
Right, of course.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Continuing. Look with me at number 3. Number 3 is an articulation of what it is about the particular section of the text, the one that you chose and identified. What is it about that that interests you? Okay. Now, notice, y'all, I'm asking you to go pretty slow. Like, we haven't even gotten to some of the heavy lifting. I just want to know, why are you interested in this passage? Okay. Maybe you're going to write about Aristotle, his chapter, I don't know, a public figure, which is chapter 2. Okay. And maybe like, why did you choose that? What was it about that that attracted you to that chapter? Maybe it's because you thought that philosophy hadn't, well, maybe it's because maybe you thought that, that chapter would be about politics, and you thought that that philosophy has nothing to do with politics. And so you were surprised to see a chapter on politics in a philosophy book. That would be a great reason for being attracted to a particular text. Are you with me? So number 3 is tell me why you're attracted to it. What is it about this that you find interesting or that you found interesting? Okay. Number 4. Now, number 4 is when you really have to start thinking. 1 through 3 is really just following the damn directions. Okay. But 4 is when you got to start thinking. And what I want you to do with number 4 is basically agree. Do you agree or disagree? Okay. No, and I shouldn't bite my nails, especially in Lent, but oh well. Do you agree or disagree with what the author is saying? Now, that's pretty black and white, and maybe you're just like, I totally disagree, or I totally agree. But I also want you to know it might not be that simple, right? Like your attitude toward the text might not be that simple. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I agree in the following way, but I disagree in the following way. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But I want you to take some kind of I want you to make some sort of a response to the passage. It could be agreement, it could be disagreement, it could be some combination of those two things. It could be something else. It could be something else. So it could be some other stance. What's a stance? A stance is like a posture or some sort of relation to the text. It could be some other stance with respect to the text, such as interrogation. You might say, I was so interested in this passage, but I think it makes no sense. And so I have 3 questions that I would love to ask Nietzsche. That's what I mean by interrogation. Does that make sense? It could just be raising questions. I thought it was very confusing and I don't understand it. So I wanted to ask these questions. Okay. You could do that. Or you could point to an inconsistency. You could say, I think that Nietzsche is contradicting himself in this passage because on the one hand, he says this, and on the other hand, he says this. Notice, I guess that's a form of disagreement, but it's also a little more complicated than simple disagreement, right? You're saying, I want to point out an inconsistency. Or you could draw out an implication. You could say something like, in this passage, Aristotle makes a really good point about motion, but he fails to say the most interesting thing about motion, which is that it's a kind of change. I don't know. But that would be drawing out an implication. Okay. That's number 4. So number 4 is agreement, disagreement, or some other stance with respect to the passage. That's where you have to start thinking. But 5 is when you think even more, because I want you to think about what you just said in 4 and give me reasons for it. You got to give me reasons for your position in number 4. Do you disagree? Give me reasons. Do you agree? Give me reasons. And justify or argue that position. Okay? Y'all, that's it. It's not rocket science, although it will require you to think. Yeah. Now, does anyone have any questions about any of that?
Father Bolter, I have a question.
Who is this, Daniel?
Yes, sir. So throughout this paper,
I forgot to email you, I think.
Oh, so throughout this paper, are we allowed to write in a first person style?
Absolutely, yes.
Good.
Yeah. I'm not nitpicky about stuff like that. Y'all, you don't even need to use secondary sources. You can, And if you use secondary sources, you better tell me, you got to tell me what they are. And if you plagiarize, you'll fail the paper. You'll get a 0 on the paper and probably fail the class. You don't have to use secondary sources. I'm not trying to teach you how to be an expert researcher. I'm trying to teach you how to grapple with a text and wrestle with it and learn something from it. And that you don't necessarily need to, you know, find a journal article to do that. Now you can. If you do, you got to tell me what it is. Are you with me? Does that make sense? Great. Any other questions? I'm gonna read the next couple of paragraphs, but any other questions before I move on?
Is there a certain type of format you want?
What do you, no, like, you mean like MLA, Chicago, blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, like
No.
if we do site work, do you want us to have a works cited page and everything?
You know, you don't even have to do that. You know, I would say be consistent, but I don't care what style guide you use. I do not care. I would say be consistent. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, if you have a footnote, number 1, you need to, number 2 needs to be another footnote, not an end note, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't care if you use MLA or Chicago Manual of Style, or I don't really care. Now, yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to have a works cited page. If you don't, I don't even think I'll count off. I won't count off for that. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we're like writing the paper and we get like stuck on something, can we like come to you for help or something?
Yes. In fact, you can send me, I would encourage you to either send me an outline of your paper, which I will do my dead level best to look at it and get it back to you, and or a rough draft. Absolutely. Now, y'all, listen though, if you do that, I want you to email it to me, and I want you to send me a text saying, hey, professor, I emailed you my blank. Can you give me your thoughts? Okay. So email me the document. Yeah, please don't share it on Google Drive. I use Google Drive all the time, but it just gets complicated. Email me the document if you can. And if you can't, we'll figure something out, but I think you can. I don't think that's problematic for you guys to email me a document, right? You can do that, right?
Yeah.
If it's a problem, I'll work with you. But in general, email me a document if you can. And then, but mainly text me. Text me and say, hey, I just emailed you something. Okay. And I'll look at it and get it back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sergio, go ahead.
Yeah. So since the focus of the paper is to think and to like organize those thoughts with reason, then it's not necessary. Like if I want to cite something, I don't know, Socrates said, I can just like put it, how do you call it? To quote it, but I don't have to really like cite, maybe cite the page, but not to be like super specific. That's what you mean?
What do you mean? What?
Like if I want to cite something he said in page 30, I'll quote what he said, cite the page, and that's it.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I would say that for Plato or Descartes, I would prefer that you use the marginal numbers as opposed to the page numbers.
Oh, of course, right. Yeah.
But yeah, you're totally right. I mean, like for the Aristotle book or the Nietzsche essay, page numbers, that's all you got. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Good. Okay.
When does this due again?
Okay, I'm gonna get there in a second. Okay, hold that thought. Who was that?
Me, Michael Butler.
Oh, hey, Michael. Yeah, hold that thought. We'll come to it in a minute. For now, read with me on your screen. Papers must be blah, blah, blah. Remember, I cut this in half, right? I cut that in half. So it's not 7.5 pages, it's 3 3/4 pages, and it's not 2250 words, it's 1175. Is that right? 1125. Okay. Paper must be submitted on Canvas. I do not accept papers on email. So yeah, I'm saying for the rough draft / outline, if you want me to look at that, you're not required to do it at all, but I'm willing to if you want me to. Email me that. Do not email me the actual paper. The actual paper must be loaded on Canvas, and I'll try to create that mechanism to do that very, very soon. Upload the paper on Canvas. Or if for some reason that's a problem for you, I mean, some of my students live in like, I don't know, the country, like a long way from Tyler. And so, yeah, I know it's hard sometimes. If you'd rather, oh crap, we don't even meet together. Dang it. Never mind. Upload. Normally I say you can turn in a copy to me, a physical copy, a hard copy, you can print it out, but that might be difficult this time, although I want to come back to that in a minute. But for now, it has to be uploaded on Canvas, okay? Now, due date. Oh, I'm going to let y'all look at this stuff on your own. I have a rubric for papers. You can look at that on your own, please. Let's find the due date. Did I say anything about the due date last class?
You said that we're like a week, we're pushing a week forward.
Okay, good. So it was originally due on March 3rd. Let's go to the reading schedule. It was originally due on March 3rd. I think that means it's due on March 10 now. Which is a Wednesday. Oh, that's spring break. You guys are so lucky. Okay, listen, I'm going to do something crazy right now. It's due on March 17. I think that's a Wednesday. But y'all, see, I hope you understand that this semester is like totally fucked up. Because it's COVID and it just sucks. And like the university is trying to get us to like be nice to you, and I do. So here's the deal. If you will turn your paper in before spring break, I will increase your grade by half a letter grade.
Can we still get an A if we don't?
What? Oh yeah. I won't penalize you
Right.
for turning it in on the due date.
So you're saying like if we have an 85 or a 75, then it would go to like a B or an A?
Yeah. If you have an 85, it would go up to a 90. Okay. If you get it to me before spring break, then I will do that.
So that will be Friday before spring break. That's the due date for the bonus.
I mean, it could even be at 11:59 on Sunday night.
Right.
'Cause-
And then the due date for
Because
like,
hang on, Sergio, spring break starts on Monday, 3/8. Monday, March 8th.
right. Mhm.
Keep going.
So for the second due date, that is like the last due date, will be then when?
Wednesday, March 17. And the reason for that is that I bumped it back a week because of the snowpocalypse. But it's spring break, so I'm going to just do it 2 weeks. So you're very lucky in that regard. Does that make sense?
Yes. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay, great. Hey, Carter. Hey. Trey, oh my gosh, I'm teaching my class. Hi, class. All right. Listen, so yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to say, but I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah. Listen, are there any more questions, comments about the paper? I want to move past the paper, but I want to talk about some other housekeeping item. And it's this, y'all, I'm getting my second COVID shot today at 5, or actually 5:45, which reminds me I have to end this class right at 5 o'clock because I have to drive up to Lindale. I want to know if you guys, look, from where I sit, I would love to meet in person again. I just would. I hate this. There's an upside, there's certain advantages, but you know what? Here's what I want to say. If you guys would be willing to just shoot me an email and let me know if you'd like to meet again or if you wouldn't like to meet again, like I might even just like take a vote. If there's a way to do a poll or a survey on Canvas, I might do that. But I want to know if y'all want to meet again or meet in person. And the reason it's complicated for me is because I know that, like, I don't know, like maybe none of your classes are meeting in person, or maybe this is the only one that's not. Like, I know that that's a factor for y'all. So, and I have no way of knowing if it's more convenient for you to meet in person or on Canvas. But if y'all could send me an email just letting me know, that would be awesome. Okay. Let me ask you just right now, raise your hand if you would rather start meeting in person. Okay. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Okay. Thank you. Raise your hand if you would rather not, if you'd rather stay online. Wow, no one. Sounds like a lot of y'all don't really care, which is fine. Okay, that's good to know. I would love to meet in person because I like people. And honestly, yeah, it's just better, okay? Thank you for that. Feel free to send me an email. And then I need to say one more thing, and that is that I'm taking attendance today. I've done a screenshot of all your names, and so I'm going to take attendance today. I'll probably take attendance like, I don't know, 4 or 5 more times before the end of the semester, and that will be rolled into your class participation grade as outlined on the syllabus, okay?
When did you take the screenshot? Because I joined kind of late. I was like 5 minutes late.
No, it was after you first talked. This is Michael, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it like 3 minutes ago. Okay. All right. Y'all, let's talk about philosophy. Enough housekeeping stuff. Let me pull up our outline real quick. My lecture schedule real quick. Hang on. Okay. I'm really glad that y'all want to meet in person. Okay. Lecture notebook. Okay, can y'all see this on your screen?
Yes, sir.
We're right here. Still continuing with last time. That should say Monday. Forget, this date is incorrect, by the way. Sorry about that. We're going to continue with this outline. We've already talked about how Aristotle's literary output is different from that of Plato. Who can give me 1 or 2 words to describe Aristotle's literary output?
Systematic.
Ooh, that's great. Who said that?
Sarah.
Good job, Sarah. Y'all, you are going to have a quiz on Monday, by the way. And it'll be over. It will include stuff that I'm going to say in the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes, okay? Anyway, yeah, Aristotle's systematic. Who can give me another word for Aristotle's writing style?
Orderly? Textbook.
Did you say expert, Nick?
As a textbook.
Textbook. Okay. Okay, good. So textbook, orderly. Okay, yeah. If I mean, okay. I'm not going to put those on the quiz. So, you know, textbook, I know what you're thinking, Nick. You're thinking about the geometry textbook. Okay, sure. Orderly, sure. Systematic is good. What's another one? I'll give you a hint. Say it again.
Chronologic.
Ariana? Synchronic, that's right. That means that that with a system, the whole thing is present at the same time. Now, it might take your little pea brain time to understand it. That's true. But it's not like there's a sequence of events within the world of the text, as opposed to a story, right? Like a Harry Potter story or a Platonic dialogue in which events do take place within the time of the narrative, right? And what's that called? Anyone know what that's called?
Diachronic.
Diachronic, and that's because that prefix dia means what?
Through time.
Through, that's right, like a diaphragm, right? Good. Another word for Plato's writing style might be
Fiction.
narrative or narratival, right? As opposed to system. You could even say story. Okay. All right, good. And we read Barnes page 3, I think. I don't know if we got through it. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. Y'all, what I want to do now is I want to talk about Roman numeral 3 and 4. There's no way that we will get through Roman numeral 4 because it's a big deal. But we will get through 3, and 3 is Aristotle's order of learning. Now, does anyone remember what the word prolegomena means? That's a fancy word. Prolegomena. Do y'all remember that? I'm going to write it in the chat. I'm 99% sure we talked about it. Maybe I'm not going to write it in the chat. Oh, here we go. Okay. Prolegomena. Prolegomena means stuff that is said beforehand. It's kind of like the idea of a prerequisite. Okay, a prerequisite is stuff that you need to know before you know something else. Like, for example, algebra is a prerequisite to what?
Calculus?
Yeah, calculus. And therefore, you can say that algebra is kind of like prolegomena to calculus. It's stuff that you need to understand in order to understand something else, okay? And so...
Is that Aristotle's writing? Did you say that about his writing earlier, or yet the last class? That you need to know something before you know something else?
So who's talking?
Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. So we're talking about Aristotle's order of learning, right? And an order of learning is kind of like a curriculum, right? Now, Sarah, the answer is yes. We are talking about Aristotle. And what I'm trying to say is that Aristotle has a particular order of learning, AKA something like a curriculum, which means that there's certain stuff that you need to know before you know other stuff, right? Sarah, does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Great. Now, y'all, I'm going to tell you what Aristotle's order of learning is, and I put it on Canvas, and it's this. By the way, I suck for like drawing stupid ass pictures and not having good graphics. This is on Canvas. We're going to come back to this in a minute, but first, I want to tell you about one of the oldest curricula in the Western world. And raise your hand if you've ever heard the word trivium or trivia. Maybe you've played that game Trivial Pursuit. I don't know if people still play that. I've never really liked it that much. But what is trivia? The word. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like a discovery, no?
You know, I think what most people think of is they think of like stuff that doesn't really matter. Like,
Oh, really? Oh,
like
there.
if something's
Something's
trivial,
trivial.
that's right.
Oh,
If something's trivial, it's like sort of like useless information, right? But that's not really what trivium means. What trivium means is it's referring to the oldest liberal arts curriculum in the world. The trivium. The trivium is what they used to study in the medieval university and even before that, which consists of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Okay? Grammar, logic, and rhetoric. That's the trivium that comes from the pre-modern, medieval, and ancient world. And notice grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Would you say that that's more word stuff or STEM type stuff?
Word.
It's more word type stuff, right? That's the trivium. It's about language and verbal communication.
You said rhetoric, right?
I did. Logic. Sorry, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And so what is a prerequisite to logic? Who can tell me what a prerequisite is to logic? You've got grammar, logic, rhetoric. What do you think?
Grammar.
That's right, grammar. Before you can go on to logic, first you have to learn grammar, right? And before you can go on to rhetoric, first you have to learn what?
Logic.
And what else?
And grammar.
Grammar.
That's right. That's it. Now, y'all, that's the trivium. The trivium. But there's this other thing called the quadrivium. Now, by the way, why trivium? It's because what does the prefix TRI mean?
3.
Right. Grammar, logic, rhetoric. 3, right? That's the trivium. But you also have the quadrivium. You've got the trivium. Can y'all see the chat? Can y'all see the chat?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You've got the trivium and the quadrivium. What does quad mean?
4.
4.
4. So the trivium is grammar, logic, and rhetoric, but the quadrivium is arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. You need to write those down. This is good quiz stuff. Let me repeat that. Arithmetic. By the way, the Greek word arithme means number. The Greek word arithme means number. You've got arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, which is the study of the heavenly bodies. They thought that what do I mean by heavenly bodies? Stars and planets, right? They thought that the heavenly bodies, who is they? Pre-modern thinkers like Aristotle and Plato. Okay? They thought that the heavenly bodies, aka the planets and stars, they thought that they moved in perfect circles. And so to their mind, astronomy is very mathematical discipline. And modern people would agree, but maybe for different reasons. Anyway, you've got arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and what was the last one?
Music.
That's kind of weird, right? I mean, when you think about those first 3, arithmetic, geometry, and astronomy, they seem very mathematical, right? But music? Doesn't that seem kind of artsy fartsy? Not to their mind, not to the ancient and medieval mind, because the main thing that they meant by music was ratios, right? Proportions of numbers. And if you've studied music theory, then that should make sense to you. I have not studied very much music theory at all, only a little bit. But music is very important for, I'm sorry, ratios are very important for music. So if you study the way that a piano is made, or the length of the chords on a harp, the relationship between those lengths is a relationship of ratios, okay? Does that make sense? So y'all, that's the trivium and the quadrivium. And by the way, what is 3 plus 4?
7.
Ever heard of the 7 liberal arts? These are the 7 liberal arts. The quadrivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. The 7 liberal arts, okay? And so y'all, I hope that you can see how that's kind of a curriculum. Like in the pre-modern world, like let's say that you went to the University of Paris in the 13th century, where you would have had Thomas Aquinas and Saint Bonaventure as your teachers. This would be your curriculum. Those 7 liberal arts, that's what you would study, okay? But that's not Aristotle's curriculum. Actually, the 7 liberal arts build on Aristotle's curriculum. Aristotle has a different kind of curriculum. And by the way, one of the things that you'll realize in the Barnes book is that, like Plato, Aristotle had a school. Now, does anyone know, and by the way, this is going to be on your quiz. You know why? It's because it's in the book and you need to do the reading, people. But does anyone know what the name of Plato's school was? The name of Plato's school was the Academy. The Academy, okay? That's Plato's school. And this is in your reading, which is why if someone doesn't watch this class online, tough, they should have read it. Plato's school is called the Academy, and Aristotle's school, because Aristotle also had a school. Now, Aristotle was in the Academy with Plato, right? Plato was his teacher. And this is all in the Barnes book. But then Aristotle started his own school, which is called the Lyceum. Let me hear you say Lyceum.
Lyceum.
That's Aristotle's school, okay? So Aristotle had a school, and in that school, he had a curriculum. And it wasn't the trivium and the quadrivium, although the trivium and the quadrivium was built on Aristotle's curriculum. And you can probably see similarities between the two. But Aristotle's curriculum is the following. And I put it on Canvas. I hope. Yeah. Aristotle's order of learning, right? I hope you can see how order of learning is the same thing as a curriculum, right? This is Aristotle's order of learning. Can y'all see that? Logic, physics, and metaphysics. Okay? Now, there's some important stuff I want to talk about. I can tell we're not going to get to Aristotle's metaphysical spectrum, which is fine. I want to get through this though, okay? Logic, physics, and metaphysics. Who can remind me what the word physics means in ancient Greek?
Nature.
Nature. And by nature, we mean what?
Things that move.
Things that move, right. Does earth and fire move? Yeah, they do. Earth moves down, fire moves up. And so physics is that realm of nature. trees that grow and then their branches fall off and then they die and decay and then they become worm food. That's called generation and corruption, okay? Generation and corruption. Aristotle wrote a dialogue called On Generation and Corruption. That's the realm of nature or physics, okay? Now, y'all, before we talk about these three things, I want to remind you that we've already talked about a certain relationship between physics and metaphysics. Y'all remember that? And I'll give you a hint. We talked about like literal books on a shelf. Y'all remember that?
You're supposed to
The
read physics.
metaphysics.
You were talking about how the way they were ordered.
Is that Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Michael, yeah, I mean, you're totally not wrong, I don't think. I think you're totally right. But I want you to like the point right now is super simple. Like literally, I'm talking about the space on the bookshelf. Who can say something about that?
Physics was on the left and metaphysics was on the right. You were
That's
supposed
right.
to read physics first.
Metaphysics came after physics, which is how it got that meta prefix, right? Meta, one of the things that the meta prefix means is after. And so you can even see that even that bookshelf kind of suggests this curriculum, right? Are you with me? Because on the bookshelf, you had physics right here. And then you had this other book that didn't really have a title yet. And they put it right here. They put it after the physics, right? And so they said, oh, let's call this book Metaphysics. See, Aristotle he doesn't call this book Metaphysics. You know what he calls it? He calls it two things. One is this. What is this, y'all?
Theta?
It's a theta, and earlier in the semester, I told you what it's a symbol for. What is theta a symbol for? Okay, what is this?
I know you mean first philosophy, but I don't know.
Phi.
The phi or the phi means philosophy. That's right, Sergio. So y'all, the phi means philosophy. Are you with me so far? I hope that makes sense. It's because the ph in philosophy is a phi in Greek, right? But what does the theta stand for? Not philosophy, but
Theos.
yeah, theos. But the word I'm looking for is not theos, it's the logos of theos. It's the study of theos. Biology is the logos of life, right? Musicology is the logos of music. What is the logos of theos? Theology. See, y'all, Aristotle never calls this book metaphysics. Guess what he calls it? He calls it theology. That's kind of crazy. Do you remember Parmenides? He says that being, he says whack a non-being, right? And being is not this, it's not that, it's not this, it's not that. It doesn't consist of parts and wholes. It's not spatially extended. It has no diversity or multiplicity, etc., right? And remember how I said Aristotle looks at Parmenides, and what does he say to Parmenides?
You're not talking about humans, you're talking about God.
Yeah, you're not talking about being, Daniel.
Right.
Being. Instead, you're talking about God. Yeah, and he also gives Parmenides a massive high five, right? He's like, Parmenides, you're brilliant, you're spot on. The only problem is you think you're talking about being, you're actually talking about God. In other words, you're talking about theos. And Aristotle doesn't call this book the metaphysics. He calls it theology. He thinks he's talking about God. And guess what, y'all? When he describes God in this book, he describes it in the exact same way that Parmenides describes being. Okay? Now, back to this little curriculum, this little order of learning. Before you study physics, you have to study logic. Now, Aristotle invented logic. I'm not going to talk about this much, but I do want to point out that chapter 7 in the Barnes book is about logic. So, you know, that you might want to write your paper on that. You might not, but that would be a fine paper topic. Then you go to physics. Physics, which is the realm of nature, the study of nature, stuff that moves and changes. And y'all now look with me at the right side of the diagram, metaphysics, because Aristotle calls he calls this book, this text that he wrote, they were really lectures, but then some student came along and wrote them down. For now, we're just going to call it a book. He calls it theology, and he also calls it first philosophy. First philosophy. He says, see, now that's weird, right? It's weird that he calls it first philosophy, because if you look on here, you've got 1, 2, 3. Is metaphysics first here?
No.
No. Is it second? Is it in the middle?
No.
No, it's last. It's dead last. What Aristotle thinks is that before you can understand metaphysics or being, or what he's going to say about God, before you can understand that, first you have to understand about nature and stuff that moves, animals, plants, etc. The 4 elements, okay? And before you can understand that, you have to understand logic. So it seems like metaphysics is last, and yet he says it's first.
Right.
Why? I'll tell you why. Go ahead.
No, I would like to know if he knew if at that time like philosophy was already a thing, because also my question is if there were other kinds of philosophy at that time for him to know that was like the first kind, you know? It's like,
yeah, that is a great question, and the answer is it was a thing, because Sergio, first off, Plato has that word in his writings, and he was before Aristotle. But secondly, if you look on the chart right here, what I'm trying to say here is that Aristotle doesn't call the work theology. He doesn't call the work metaphysics. He calls it theology, and he also calls it first philosophy. He uses that phrase in the metaphysics. I could find it and show it to you. First philosophy. It was a thing.
So this is also just following his structure of human knowledge, which is on page 45.
Oh, good question. It's definitely related. Yes, I would say that it's a super simplified version. And I can't remember exactly what Barnes says in this chapter. Was this chapter one of the ones that I assigned you?
Yes, it was.
Okay, yeah, it's totally related, Jagger. What I'm giving you is a more simplified version, and I might, you know, you talk to 10 different philosophers, you're going to get 10 different takes on things. So I might not see things exactly like Barnes does. But yeah, what I'm trying to say to you right now, this is kind of like this. It's very similar, Jagger. One of the things that I'm wanting to say to you, though, is that in a weird way, even though metaphysics in one sense is last, in another sense, it's first. Now, how can that be? How can it be first? I'm going to tell you 2 reasons, okay? Number one, it's first in priority, right? The word first can mean different things. Remember, a lot of what philosophy is just paying attention to our language and our words. And one of the things that you can mean by first is not the initial item in a sequence, but the best, right? If we say that the Queen of England is the first among equals, do we mean that like she was the first English person ever born? No. Do we mean that she was the first person to stand in line to get her COVID vaccination? No. What do we mean? We mean that she is somehow, I don't want to say she's the best, although maybe. We mean that there's a certain priority. She has a certain priority. Does that make sense?
Yes, I believe he means that metaphysics or first philosophy is fundamental, is the most fundamental thing.
Well, we're going to get to that. That is the other thing that he means, Sergio. But first, I just wanted to say he means best, loftiest, superior. He means best in that, or first in that sense. But secondly, it is what you're saying, Sergio, because the other thing that he wants to say, and probably Barnes does talk about this in that chapter, Jagger, is that really, on the one hand, you need to understand logic and physics to understand metaphysics, but in another weird sense, you have to understand metaphysics in order to go back around and understand everything in logic and physics. In a weird way, metaphysics gives physics its principles. Now, that's kind of a weird thought. But
Hey, it's 5:01.
Thank you. I'm going to talk for like 2 more minutes. You're awesome. Have you guys ever heard it said that like biology reduces down to chemistry and chemistry reduces down to physics? Have y'all ever heard that?
Nope.
Oh, a lot of people say that. Let me repeat it. Biology reduces down to chemistry and chemistry reduces down to physics. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with that or disagree with that. A lot of people say that, but that's a statement about the relationship between different disciplines of science. Something similar is going on here. There's a relationship between the discipline of physics and the discipline of metaphysics. Aristotle's saying they're connected, and they're connected in a couple of different ways. First off, physics is simply a prerequisite for metaphysics. That's one thing. But then secondly, if you really want to understand physics completely and to the bottom, all the way down, you need to understand metaphysics, and then you go back to physics, okay? And y'all, I think that's it. We will talk more about this, although, yeah, we're going to pick up with this next time because we're going to start talking about a little bit about God and what Aristotle says about God. But that's it for today, okay? You will have a quiz on Monday. It's good to do the reading. I mean, technically, you're supposed to do the reading. One of the things that I tell students, I've probably told you this before, I probably told you this when we took our first quiz, is that it's if you can't do the reading, just try and do some skimming. Did I tell you this before? What do I mean by skimming? Well, how about this? Read the chapter titles. How about this? What's another way to skim? You could read the first sentence of every paragraph, okay? So at least try to skim, okay? Y'all, may the force be with you.
And also with you.
Have a great
Also
weekend.
with you.
Y'all take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.